What else? I'm an Android GDE and associate Android developer. I think that's the name of the certification. Yeah, so I'll be doing the unit testing today. I'll be sharing how I unit test my things at work. So yeah, today's just gonna be about unit testing. I don't have slides or any of that stuff. I'm just going to be like a live coding kind of experience. So I might fail. I might might see a lot of bugs, but I'll just show you how my day-to-day kind of looks like when I'm testing, and some terms that you might actually hear when testing, or frameworks or libraries out there that you can also maybe use in your day-to-day workflow and testing. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, Linus.
Nothing else, so we can just start. You can share your screen. I think you have the option.
Okay. Let me see. Okay. Wait, how do you share screens on mute? Present now your entire screen. Do I want to share my entire screen? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me just share this screen with nothing. And okay, so I guess I'll just start from. So there's the UI instrumented testing. This is when you like write tests for your actual. There's some of just that require some instrumentation device to actually run, like an emulator or some simulator, and all these actions that occur on the screen and user interactions. They're more tied to the Android framework. Then the actual unit tests, which you can really write, you can write them without really depending on any Android, framework or dependencies. And so, what a unit test really is quite open to interpretation. A unit could be that small function, it could be a class, it could be a given set of functionality. So different people interpret units in different ways, and that depends on the context of your project. So let me try and create a new project test app, and test app a couple of test app sample, yeah, something more specific, DSC, and finish. Okay. And Get Studio. So the thing, I just want to build a very quick, simple screen with the usual. So I'll just try and build a very quick MVVM-ish kind of app and show you how I would approach this. The IDE is tiny. I guess it's way larger now, but I think I'll have to fix the font. Wait, is it there like increase font size? I want to keep on. No, I don't want to keep on. I thought this will just take me directly to the preferences. Okay, I guess I'll just have to keep doing this until I'm satisfied, until everyone sees everything. Is that good enough? I assume it works. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so usually unit testing, as I said, open to interpretation. Some people might call some unit tests integration tests. Some people might call the integration test unit tests. So it really depends on what is a unit in the scope of what you're doing. And yeah, that's my primary focus today. I think I will start by, usually when you create Android Studio projects, you're gonna have this default like this is another one of the example of instrumented tests. Like you see, it kind of depends on some instrumentation device or something that's gonna be used to actually instrument orchestrate all the tests. But that's not what I'm gonna focus on today. I'll be more on the vanilla JUnit and other frameworks I'm familiar with kind of tests that are not really tied to any UI thing. Yeah, so let me delete this. Okay, guess creator is done. So I can start building something random. So usually when I build apps, I start from the bottom up. So why do we test? So testing helps in a lot of ways. I'll give you an example. Our app has, we have a lot of features and a lot of developers have come and gone. And if you're working on an app which has been, let's say, touched with a lot of people, like 20 plus people have worked on the app, it's very hard when you're actually making changes. You want to be sure you're not breaking some, functionality or introducing bugs. Or if you're introducing bugs, you want to know that you've introduced a bug or you've broken a certain path. So testing can kind of give you the feeling, or you can kind of know what's going wrong or what's broken and needs to be fixed. Also, whenever there's like a new bug ticket, you can just like add tests to be sure like this bug will never happen. Other benefits which I've seen writing tests is, are there any other benefits I have seen? So I think it's just like having the confidence to keep on. As much as it may take extra time to write tests, it just gives you some kind of confidence when you're shipping features. And yeah, I think unit tests are one of the simplest way to start testing, especially with already when you build a new project or create a new project. Usually have JUnit already bundled in the app, so you can just like start unit testing immediately. I will be making use of JUnit, as this I think is the most simplest out of the box testing framework out there as far as unit testing is concerned. But yeah, I'll kind of just share how I do. Yeah, this is a very simple basic test, but I will be deleting this. Just delete. So the idea is to build something quite fast. So do I know of an API that can help us? Okay, let me see if I can get a very nice simple API to work with. Just a sec. I'm thinking of a quick API, because usually I guess most people working in real life apps actually working with some API of some sort. Like which API can I think of? Let me just see. Yes. I'm trying to remember one API that I wanted to use. Okay, there's a collective list of public APIs. But if anyone just has any random suggestion of a quick API, you can just shoot. I really don't care what type of API. The deal is just to show you how testing looks like. Let me see. Okay, so there's this one. So someone suggested this one, a free fake API for testing and prototyping. Awesome. Yeah, you can just use this. So awesome. I also assume most people use just full APIs, so I'll also need fit. And using it just to set up everything quite fast. I'm just gonna just dump this somewhere. So because we are not doing Android, just the Android instrumentation, and remove that and leave JUnit. So we have retrofit. I don't know what the latest version is. Usually that's the lowest possible number, and hopefully they tell me what the latest is to what I know. So retrofit set. And I do not care about all those other things. I'll just create a, what's the name of this place, of this API? JSON holder. Just JSON. JSON. It's holder. API. Something. Dot. And what endpoints does it have? Posts. Get posts. Okay. Just posts. Okay. Get posts. And has thing going on for it. Yes. So we have this. Then I assume we're gonna have like a repository. So the whole idea of, if you're a bit not familiar with MVVM, so think of the repository is kind of just like a source of truth. It's where I'm gonna be doing the mediating data sources, kind of consolidates data sources. Let's say you have like something loading from the API, then you have your local database. So usually it's nice to have a source of truth. So like you get the data from the API, save it, then show this to the user. If you receive fresh data, you have to again delete the data in the database, retrieve it, save it, show that. If it's paging, you can maybe add extra information in the database. So like this is the data from the first page, this is the data from the second page. So usually the repository is where all this kind of work is done. If you look at most projects on GitHub. So it seems like the font size got smaller for some weird reason. Isn't there a shortcut for this? They cannot, there should be a shortcut. Okay, I can see they're not showing the shortcut, but it's fine, I'll just do this. And it's large enough. Yeah, hopefully. I don't know why it reset when I command plus comma. Okay, command plus comma, command plus, and font size is font JetBrains. I'm gonna just set this to 20 is too large. Okay, it is fine. I'm gonna call this posts repository. Yeah, for now, I think because we just have one data source, it might not entirely make sense, but this is just to mimic what you might see out there. JSON, so the API, and let's say probably we have something that gets posts, and the JSON method, I should be able to return something. Yeah, let's say it needs to return some kind of posts. What's the return type? Use ID, title, body. So I'm just gonna create a quick response data class. So this is a data class, just data. Okay, ID. Does this have? Okay, I can do what I was thinking of. Is ID title body? So user ID something. Title string body equals string equals ID something string. And yeah, good enough. That should work. So we have this. It returns a list of these objects. So what response? So this is kind of what we expect this to be bringing, and because it's gonna be working in the background, I guess, and yeah, a couple of other retrofit related classes. This response and give us the state of the response thing. Yeah, unless I'm forgetting something. I don't work with, just to make it clear, I don't work with just for the APIs at work. I'm heavy on GraphQL, so yeah, I might not entirely remember everything about retrofit. Yeah, I think this should kind of be enough to show you what I'm trying to show you. Suspend, okay, from a coroutine. Suspend this. And could be private. Okay. So usually you might have like all this setup and you're just like adding more code and you don't really know if it's gonna work. And at this point, even when you're doing like an interview and you're trying to develop this feature, maybe because I'm pretty sure like the mobile space, when you're doing interviews, they have like this 2 hour or 1.5 hours or 1 hour or some minutes to kind of develop something. And once you've already like done this kind of basic setup, it's nice to start actually writing the tests. Let me just rename this for the sake of my sanity. So yeah, from here you can kind of start writing your unit test. Doesn't, because you already have like an idea how it will look like. You can start, prototyping your tests and you just fix it until it works. So you might have heard of TDD. I mean, I don't 100% follow TDD. I usually write my stuff, then test it. But if you're actually fully aware of what you'll be developing and all the edge cases, you can start writing your tests. And yeah, if you think you can do it. But I think that kind of needs a bit of practice of writing a lot of tests and being fully aware of how you are going to architect your solution. So if you're aware of that, you can kind of do TDD without stress. So I'm going to create a post test. So I guess there are two schools of thought. Of people might interpret this as two different. Some people might call this an integration test because it's fetching data from the API and also fetching. Okay, in a real app, it also will be having access to like a database. So it kind of, you can think of it as some people might think of it as an integration test because you're testing how different, what happens when different data sources are put together. But yeah, also at the same time, I think it can also be a unit test because you're just testing the specific unit, and that the unit is the data part. And yeah, so that part of like unit and integration sometimes seems very blurry, in my opinion. Repository tests. So how you write a test with JUnit is very simple. Just come write a test, and you want to test if so usually when I'm writing tests, I follow a certain, so there's when you're writing tests, there's like three, what can I call them? When you're writing tests, there are certain conditions or there are certain things that will happen for each and every single test. So the first thing is what objects are you testing, and what conditions should these objects go through, and what is the end result after these objects have passed through the condition. You might have heard of something like given, when, then, or you have to describe this scenario for your tests. So whenever I'm writing my test, I usually name them using this pattern. So I might say when the posts are loaded, when the posts are loaded, then the expected results are returned. Yeah. So like I said, you might have this given a post repository, for example, given objects and a test. Object that we're testing here is the post repository. Post repository, given a post repository, when we load posts, so that's when the condition, then the expected result is returned. So most of the tests usually have this, given these objects, like this is where you create your objects, this is where you initialize them, then you do the thing that you're interested in, like fetching your posts, then you actually can test your posts, your results. And JUnit is like, it's like JUnit is like out of the box, you just hit test. This is pretty much any test framework you use. This is how they mark something as a test by using this annotation called test. And we get the posts. So we have, this is where we assert. So the thing is, okay, with JUnit doesn't have a lot of assertion options. So you might find people using other libraries like truth. If you're using RX, there are libraries dedicated for assertions. If you're using coroutines or live data, etc. So for now, I'll just keep things simple and assert what do we really care about? Yeah, maybe assert like the posts that you got to. Another thing with tests, you might have already data, the data that you expect. So expected posts. Maybe if you've ever done algorithm tests, they usually have all this set of data which you kind of already expect. If you're given this is what you should be getting back. Yeah, we'll get to the run blocking, ignoring that for now. So yeah, we'll just have like a, list of some post response. So yeah, we expect this is what we'll get to. So back to what, so time to start fixing the test now that we kind of have an idea of how the test will look like. So we expect this as the actual code that will be run to get the post. We expect it to return the posts like that we expect from the expected posts. I can just create some dummy data first here. I fix the test and give it like ID, one, I don't know, something. This is usually just dummy data. There are a couple of libraries which also help you generate dummy data if you need some dummy data. For the something, maybe, you know. And then, so this, so I didn't, okay, so because I am using coroutines, I think this is what most of the Kotlin community seems to be using. I guess I use Rx at work, but yeah, I think I'll just have to work with coroutines because this is just the modern stuff. Get post should be called only from a coroutine. So for testing, we have for testing coroutines, we should have something called run. I think I'll need to add that dependency. Run a blocking test. I mean, it's a test. I think we don't really care that much. And I think tests, I assume they're not running like a multi-threaded end, so you can kind of just block your test and run without any repercussions. So we might have to add this dependency for testing coroutines. And tests. Wait, am I missing something? Okay, Kotlin coroutines test. Okay, I'll just lift this as it is. And dump it here. So yeah, depending if you're Rx, if you're using Rx live data, I haven't done a lot of testing with live data, but if you're using maybe Rx, there's also supporting tests thing for Rx. I think, wait, so someone asked a question in the chat. You should use run blocking for coroutine. Yes, there's run blocking test, there's run blocking tests. Yeah, I guess both of them kind of work. Actually, it seems, it's deprecated. I guess it's back to run blocking then. Or is it deprecated? Okay, I haven't tested coroutines in a while. I'll just stick to this. Yeah, not deprecated. And then you ask, what's the difference to use this assert of Kotlin and assert true of JUnit? Is there any advantage? Honestly, unless we actually go to the declaration, wait, can't I jump to the? I mean, this is the assert from Kotlin, assert value, assert, and you're asking about this and assert true. Do you have assert true? That doesn't, let me see. I think it's also this frameworks on that especially the assertions one. I'm pretty sure if we continue digging deep, we'll just find it's almost similar to what we would expect, or rather they kind of just have the same implementation details as a deeper dive. So I guess it's a matter of what your team or what you prefer, similar to someone choosing Rx over coroutines or whatever you are most familiar with. So I wouldn't really say there's a strong preference on there's no like there is no, I'd say, really standing out difference or advantage, say, between the two, because if we continue digging deep in the code, you'll see they kind of just look the same. Post repository. So we fix this. The next issue is they say no value passed for parameter JSON placeholder API. And so this is where I will talk about another concept. When you're testing, you might hear people talk about mocks, fakes, stubs. So those are kind of different, they all mean like different things. So first, you can have a fake. What a fake really, or a test double, is you maybe have this interface that you need to provide for your object to actually be created, to be created to be used. And what a fake or a test double is, you just create a whole different, using this interface, you create a whole different object specifically for tests. So I can just come and create maybe like like class based on placeholder API testing. So rather than using the real API, I just create this fake interface and I can just use it to test instead. Now, why do people do this? It's, you don't really want to be hitting the actual API every time you're testing. Also, it's a bit slower and makes things a bit flaky, meaning you can't really rely on your tests are kind of, your test passing and failing is kind of tied to how the server is at that particular moment, and you need to have control over this, or your tests are going to be flaky. So that's pretty much one of the reasons why people create fakes. Also, if you're running like thousands of tests and they're all hitting the API, you can imagine that also will kind of affect your, server costs or whatever it is. If you're actually being billed for every time you hit the API and you have a team of, let's say, 10 devs and all of them are running these parallel pipelines and running all these tests hitting the API, you can imagine how that will look like in the long term. So usually we just try and create a fake or test double. So this is one way of doing it. Just override the interface and implement members, get posts, and just provide it like a return response success, and I can just like pass in a list of something. So I do this, just provide here test JSON this whole API testing, and let's provide this. So this is one way of doing it, and this is gonna return a response. It is gonna return a list of oh, okay. So I think I need to also modify this to just do this, because this test will fail. So I just want to check if it is gonna return result of success of this. So I think this test should run. If it shouldn't, I will just have to fix it. I guess there's no escaping this. So yeah, this is kind of just how most tests look like. You have the objects that will help you actually do your tests. Then you actually do some condition like loading something, modifying something, just some side effecty thing. Then you have maybe what you expect to get, and let's see, I'm sure it's something to do with JUnit framework. It could this be more assertion failure? So another thing that I do, wait, assert true, does assert true. Okay, so actually I now realized why I used assert was because I think it has, wait, is this the right assert I'm hoping for? I hope so. I'm not sure if assert true has this, but I can. If you're using like other frameworks, they already kind of show this to you, but I usually like doing this. So I usually come and like expected. This was the expected results. Then I come and show the actual results here. So yeah, but the actual reviews other libraries out there, they actually make this. I'm gonna do this for you. So see, since it's assertion failure. So if it's an assertion failure, yeah, so if you see like an assertion, I think like the assertion was wrong. So it expected a success, but actually got this. So response protocol, okay. HTTP localhost. So this means you have to go back and start fixing what can be fixed. Suspend, get posts. Go look at this again. Response, return the list of response. And so where is the issue coming from? It expected this actual. Is this the right response? Okay, so see, I was using the wrong thing, but it did response. So this should now work. Okay. So what's happening now? Expected. Response success. I thought, wait, I'm even using the retrofit response. Okay. Success, list of response, list of response, protocol code. Okay. So yeah, this also happens sometimes. Everything might make sense, but then let's see, what am I missing? What am I missing? Expected post must not be in the given. Okay, just get back to you in a sec. I'm trying to see why this doesn't work. It might be a coroutine thing which I'm not aware of. Expected response protocol. Okay. So let me see if there's something else I need to set up in from the, okay, there's run test in order to work. Okay, this is Kotlin JS. Okay, run test is the rich test code that involves coroutines. Suspect functions can be called inside it. So, okay, that's something new I learned today. Let me do what they want. So yeah, run test I think is the new one, and actually run blocking tests. So it just failed. Still the same issue. Delay skipping, launch and asleep, controlling dispatchers, eager launch virtual time. I don't think I need to set any dispatcher thing because we are not doing any UI related tasks here. Invoke and just continue. Resume with process, chain blocking, and blocking. Run test default, create worker. Okay. Assertion error. Assert posts. Change, am I missing something? Okay, well, I'll try something different. As I figure out what's wrong with the mock, I'll try and use, no, what's wrong with the fake? These are called fakes. I'll try and figure out I'll try and use a mock and see if I still get the same thing. So usually what mocks are, or other mocks, so usually this is the behavior when you actually, so I'll start from, if you're using an external library or a third-party service, and you're actually relying on their service and you need to kind of mimic some behavior during tests. They usually provide you this mock objects for test environments. And primarily you shouldn't mock what you don't own. That's one rule of mocking. And actually to provide this mocking behavior, we use like third-party frameworks most of the time. And you just pass in the object that you like to mock, and you only provide implementation, or rather stub out specific implementations of the functions that you want to return something, rather than mocking rather than providing, like, if you're creating a fake, I want you to imagine if this interface had like 60, or okay, 60 is a bit, I think that's a bit too much for an interface, but if you have this interface with like 10 methods and all of them, you need to provide like a response to every single one of them, and you need to cater in for all different kinds of cases, like error case. For example, this only provides the success. We haven't thought about the error case. We haven't thought about any other weird thing that might happen. So this is kind of where maybe mocks have an upper hand. You just mock out this thing, and I think we'll see when I actually do it. And you just stub out. Stubbing is just providing the implementation of that specific, just providing the method that you're actually just interested in and the result you want it to produce. So that way you can just worry about, when this method is hit, I want it to return this value, and rather than care about all the other things which you don't need for your test. So I will use a mocking framework which I am familiar with, which is, there are a couple of them. There's mock K, but I'll use Mockito Kotlin. There's Mockito for people using Java. There's Mockito Kotlin. Where is it? Not up. This is Mockito Kotlin. Yes. I'll just carry this over to Mockito Kotlin. This version is, I don't want the snapshot, 4.0. There are a bunch of other libraries for mocking. Yeah, whatever works for you. And what I want to do is mock this JSON placeholder. So I will just come here and write mock JSON API. I want, this is the one. Okay. So and then I'll say whenever we want to get posts, then return that response value. With the list, return this. And this is kind of how mocks look like. So you only just care about that specific method that's gonna concern you or you're interested in for your actual test. So let's see if this changes anything. If not, then it's something to do with how I'll have to configure. So it's still it still works, but I guess it's something to do with configuring coroutines. Let's see. Configuring coroutines and tests. Wait, Java long unit assertion error, create breakpoint. Wait, why is this brown? Okay. It's been such. Let's see. Unit testing with coroutines. There's something I am missing. Let's see. The Android way. Testing coroutines. Let me see if there's actually something I am not missing. Testing. Okay. Looking for what today? Live data. No, I'm not looking for live data. Yeah, this pretty much has the same feel to it unless I need something. Okay, it seems they are also setting some dispatchers. Doesn't make sense to me why we need to set dispatchers considering it's running in a test coroutines. A dispatcher meant for testing. It execute task immediately and gives you control. Okay, so I think I'll just dump this and see if this is what was needed all this time. And yeah, I don't. Okay, so this is even deprecated. Yeah, I think even they say the execution order of test coroutine dispatcher can be confusing and the mechanism of pausing is typically misunderstood. Please use standard test dispatcher or, okay. I think I'll just use the deprecated stuff first because that's what they still have in their code labs. And yeah, if this actually is what's missing, then I definitely see why it might be a bit of work for just a simple unit test. Let's see, does this change anything? Does this make things worse? It's always an extreme spot with live coding. Experimental, okay, so let's see. This dispatcher could be private, and what do they use the dispatchers for? Do I also need to create rules? Extends test watcher, which implements, it makes medical routine a JUnit rule. Because it doesn't make sense for me to just add them there. I think it needs to be part of some rule. No, let me just run it first and see if this improves anything. No, internet permissions are not needed for tests because it's a unit test, not on, it's not really okay, even integrated or UI tests also don't really need permissions unless you shouldn't be hitting an actual API. You should like mock out those third-party dependency. Like don't for your test, don't ever hit like actual APIs. Try and hit the local host instead. If it's on your device or on the CI environment, just don't hit the actual API. Then that's when maybe you'll have to think of all this permissions and everything. Yeah, let's see what's wrong with our test. Maybe debug the method and the test. Are you testing for successful response or considering each field that is similar? No, actually, I just needed to check that the response is successful. Actually, now that you mentioned it, I think I might see what the issue is. Okay, I wouldn't really do this, but still, I would expect it to. Okay, you know what? Let me just. This is something that's very. Okay, yeah, maybe I might have. Yeah, maybe I might have to actually check for each. No, let me just do this. This is very hacky, and actually no, I won't do that down. I won't show hacky ways of doing tests. Let me see if this fixes anything. Oh yeah, so it works. So the thing is, so the test was fine all along. Apparently, I think even this might not even be needed. I think I might have identified what the issue was now. Sprints really help improve this thing. The thing was what can I say? So when the equals sign again, usually it's always the small things that make have you scratching your head. The equals sign expects it to be like a similar instance. They are not, as much as they have the similar contents, they are not the same. No. Actually, it doesn't make sense even why the equals didn't really work for, because I think they still had the same contents, but it's something to do with the equals operator and the response success. The success, what is this? The response success class. So the test was fine all along. It's just I needed to actually check the actual contents and now they pass as expected. So if I go to build, run, okay, it doesn't show anything. But yeah, the tests kind of work as expected. So even if I come back and replace the mock with the fake, I do expect it to still run. And you might notice I didn't have to think about retrofit. I didn't have to think about DI. I didn't have to think about all this noise that kind of happens when you actually do instrumented tests. And when you're actually writing tests, there's usually something called a testing pyramid. I can just show what that means. To get a clear picture of what this looks like. And so the whole idea is to have, okay, this is a whole block. I just wanted the picture. The whole idea is to have as many unit tests as possible, and they should run quite fast. The unit tests should be very, very fast. I should be able to run thousands of unit tests in like seconds. As opposed to like UI tests will take a bit of time, because especially if you have like a CI environment, you need like to set up the emulator. Then once the emulator starts, the tests will have to be run one after the other, doing all these interactions on the device. So UI tests are very, very slow compared to unit tests. So unit tests are quite fast. Unit tests are also, I think, in terms of maintaining unit tests, it should also be quite simple to maintain unit tests compared to UI tests, and especially if you're using if you have UI tests bundled with your pipelines and everything. So personally, I'm a fan of unit tests. I do not like UI tests, as even if sometimes I might encounter them and have to just work with them, but I'm not a fan of UI testing. But hopefully things like I don't know if maybe Compose might make people like UI tests more. We'll see. So this was a very quick, simple show of how to write unit tests. And as you can see, we already kind of started writing tests even before we ran the app. So we are sure like, hey, our API will kind of be working this way. So by the time I'm even getting to the actual activity and running the app, I am already confident my repository works as expected. So we are only testing for the success case here. So you might now be wondering what do we do to maybe test the error case? So there's two ways you can do this, or if you have other paths that you want to test. So we have these objects under test, we load the post, expected result is returned. So the part that needs to change is this. We need to be able to, swap or return a different response when it's an error, right? So one way of doing this is duplicating the test, which is perfectly fine. There is no shame in duplicating tests and saying when the posts are, so I can rename this when the posts are loaded and the success result is returned. And when the posts are loaded, then the error result is returned. Which I can come here and say error. I don't know what type does it want. Yeah, it wants some error, and I can feed in whatever information it wants. What information does it want? Well, none of the following can be called. Which one do I need? I don't know which one I need. Let me just jump to the definition and create a synthetic with an HTTP code and response body. Okay, so I can just come here and give some error code like, I don't know, 44, and the response body create. Okay, did I create enough information to infer T? Okay, let's give this some type of so this is gonna return the error, but then you remember if you're using a fake, so this is where things get interesting. If you're using a fake, so the fake only returns a success, so you have to now this is now where fakes might also start becoming a bit of hard to maintain. You have to go back to your fake and cater in for this different path that you need to test. And so I might have to come here and, I don't know, create a when statement or some flag that tells me, hey, this is supposed to return success, this is supposed to return an error. So if you're using a fake, it might probably look like this. Okay, let me just say this return. And in this situation where you're even just creating some variables or some booleans or some flags just for the sake of a test, which I do not recommend personally. But I'll show you how you can make life easier with mocks or other strategies. So let's say I have, no, let me just do this. And call this success. Let me just call it API state. And API state. Okay, so this won't even work because overriding the so I guess we've already hit our limitation with the fakes. So I might have to just try the other approach directly, and that is, let me just remove this and show you what I will do instead of using a fake. I will use a mock, and I think, I thought I did have one, so I'll just use a mock. Okay, apply. So whenever we call get posts, then return. I can make it return a response of success. And for this one, I'll just do the same, but instead of returning a success, I'll just make it return an error. Oops. Okay. Just this. So I'll just come here and say this returns an error. And for response body create So I assume that kind of fixes everything, and each test feels like self-contained as opposed to going back to the fake and modifying. You can imagine if you're lots of you working on tests for a specific feature, and everyone is like doing all these things with this fake. So someone changes the state, or someone removes the state, or someone adds, like, it's prone to be abused so much, in my opinion. And this kind of makes every test feel self-contained, and you can just come and edit the specific parts of the test that changed with how the feature changed. And yeah, so you have two tests, but we can actually collapse these tests to one test and test for all possible conditions. So this is another thing you might also see with unit testing. I assume, yeah, with unit tests. I haven't seen anyone do this with UI tests. It's called parameterized testing. So what is parameterized? It's just writing unit tests that don't suck. Rather than duplicating your tests over and over doing the same thing, you can have one test and just change the parameters as needed and give it what result, like you give it this set of data and this is what you expect to be outputted from this data. Also, it has this, I think it feels more functional because also functional programming is just a matter of you give something, given a set of input, this thing will produce a certain set of output and it will never change. It will never change. Let me just show you by example. I think it'll make more sense when I show it. So to actually do this, you need a different set of libraries. So JUnit 5 has support for parameterized tests. This is Unit 4, but requires a bit of setup for Android, and I'm not going to do that. I instead will use something I am more familiar with, and that is, my God, what's it called? Yeah, it's called JUnit params, pragmatists, JUnit params. Yes, so you can even see from their samples. So rather than creating two tests, you just provide parameters and do your tests. And depending on this parameter, this is what we expect. So if I give it 17, I expect it to be false. If I give it this, I expect it to be this. Like parameterized tests that don't suck. That's their motto. So I will add this to test compile. Okay, test compile is quite old school. It's supposed to be test implementation. And let's see how we can make our tests be parameterized. And so here, for example, we only have to look at the parts of our data that affects the parts of our data that affects the inputs that affect our outputs. And it's this response from the API that will affect what we expect. So this needs to be out. Yeah, this might not seem, maybe it doesn't make sense because I'm not doing any mappings and everything. But usually most chances are in this repository, you might be having a different, I don't know if, maybe if I do that, it's gonna make sense. So as I said in the beginning, we usually have, I said I'm gonna use the MVVM with like repositories and etc. And the repository is what I said has the kind of mediates different sources. You might have your APIs, your database, your shared preference, whatever it is you're using to get data and merge them or do whatever it is you want to do with this data and return a streamlined result. That's like the source of truth. So in normal scenarios, we wouldn't really be exposing like the API response in the repository. So maybe I'll just try and create a new, I'll just call it posts. So the assumption here is we have done all this fetching, then we're like cleaned our data and did all this mapping, etc, and the result return is called posts. Maybe I'll just copy paste this. So let's say it returns that here. Let's say this returns a list of posts. Yeah, I need to map things. Map posts. Once body up, and then I will return post. This naming. Post, and we have ID, title, so we can map this points. ID. What else do we need? Yeah, probably someone who really likes Kotlin wondering why I'm not using with. I stopped using scope functions that much nowadays. Let's see if we don't know. Okay, let us do this. So that you can actually see the difference when you're testing. And yeah, obviously the test will fail. Get posts. So expected posts need to be so that thing expected post expected posts. So the expected posts. Yep. I just wanted to get rid of that body stuff that was going on there. And how do we know? We can now make this parameterized this way. So we'll create posts response. So depending on the response, it's gonna affect the output. And then we are gonna, whenever we get posts, then return the posts response. So that returns the post response, and we have the expected posts. And this is gonna return a list of posts. So this is gonna be the expected posts. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So you can see like our test isn't really tied to any specific data. We can just keep on swapping the response and the expected posts. So depending on the response we get, we're gonna receive a different post that I'm so I can write this one ij unit. So I'll need to provide. So the thing is also with JUnit 5 or with JUnit params, you need to provide the source of your where, like you need to, this function needs to be able to get this parameter from somewhere. It needs to have like some place it's observing these values or somewhere it can receive the streams of data. So where it's gonna be receiving it, we're gonna create like a function. Let's call it params for loading posts, and we have, so this is just how you do it with JUnit params. JUnit 5 also looks different, not entirely the same. So each set of data have a different thing. So for success, so this represents the first set of, so what happens is with the test, for each set of data you provide is going to be run as a different test. So this will run, the test will run once. If I provide another set of data, the test will run with a different set of data that I provide, and etc, 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 etc. So the first set will be the success stuff. So I think I'm just gonna copy. Okay, I deleted it. So okay, I think I'll have to again create it by hand. Okay, response. It's of posts. Response. I don't know what else did this response have. Copy and let's type up. So this represents this post response. So when the test is run, it's gonna read this first, and you need to provide the second expected post value, which is it's of post. And if this is mapped, I think it's gonna look like this. Maybe ID so this is the first set of data. Then for the second set, we can also just cut this out. Let me think I might go back and change. This might not really pass, but again, let me just do this. Because I haven't configured the error, how to handle errors on that end. But yeah, that's what tests are all about. They have to fail and then you like fix them. So the second set of data is gonna concern tests. It's gonna concern errors, sorry. Unresolved. Okay, post response. And what we expect it to return is, I don't know, maybe a throwable or some error code. Okay, now this is an error. This is gonna make it, and this was probably not the best example. Okay, maybe if it's an error, let's say we expect it to be an empty list. So it returns nothing. So I think that kind of covers, yeah, if nothing happens, I think it's gonna just return an empty list. And yeah, so we can also get rid of this test. And we need to tell it where to read the data. And this is the method. So it kind of uses reflection under the hood. I don't know about the unit 5 one, I'm not sure if it uses reflection as well. And it looks unused, so actually highlighting that it's into okay that you have unused. Okay, so yeah. And if we run this, I expect this to pass. Test events are not reached. Oh, okay, so one thing, when you use JUnit, this parameterized tests, you have to provide something called a runner. So the runner is what kind of marks like, hey, this test has parameterized tests, so it might need different configurations because the test needs to know how to be able to read the data that you're providing or where the stream of data is coming from, etc. etc. Unlike the vanilla JUnit. So JUnit params. JUnit, wait, what the JUnit params? I don't know. I forgot. Not the unit thing. A JUnit params runner. JUnit. I think that should be it. Okay, the examples are in Java. They should kind of work. So when I actually run, yeah, both tests pass. So you want to see the coverage, you can see it's tested all the paths. Okay, so this is a lot of, wait, where is the actual repository? Strange. Yeah, let me see. Okay, weird enough, it's not showing the repository being tested. Yeah, but either way, it kind of has tested all the paths and is good to go. So yeah, there's so much that can be said about unit testing. I've mentioned a couple of terms you might come across: mocks, fakes, doubles, parameterized tests. The common libraries like JUnit, Mockito, Mock-K. For Kotlin, you have things like Mock-K. We have, what else? Which other libraries? Yeah, there's just a bunch of libraries out there, and different teams use different testing strategies. If you're a solo Android developer, I think then it's up to you to decide what works best for you. There's so many options. Vanilla JUnit is also nice. Also, that depending on also what reactive library you're using, RX, live data, coroutines, if you're into event bus or whatever it is you're using, there are also lots of different libraries out there that caters to your needs. So this was just a quick example of how to do this. Same thing would apply to the view models, but now you'll have to think about if you're using view models or presenters or whatever it is you call them to for the to present UI data. a bit more configuration might be needed to observe whatever it is you're observing. But otherwise, everything else kind of just remains the same. Let me see what time to use fakes and mocks. Yeah, I think based on the issues that I just faced, like I was mentioning about how maintaining fakes would be hard, and how I think we might have seen how modifying fakes in the long run would be a bit of work. And especially if people keep on modifying the fake interface or the fake that's being shared by multiple people, it might bring a bit of issues. And mocks kind of make the test feel quite self-contained, and you don't really have to care about going back to the fake and making sure like everything is like you don't really have full control on what's happening. But yeah, different people have different preferences, so whatever works best for you. I think also a fake is not that bad if it's just like a simple thing, but if it's you have like this interface with so many methods, and you have to implement every single one of them so that your fake works, and you have to cater for different scenarios, then yeah, that might suck. What if you had a post repository, which is an interface, which is an implementation? I mean, that doesn't change. That wouldn't really change much. So you're asking if we had interface post repository. So this doesn't really affect much in unit tests, because as I said, we don't care about things like DI when it comes to, you just like test whatever objects you're interested in. So even if you're just swapping out things or doing some DI related stuff, that won't really affect. The only benefits maybe just you have the ability to swap out this interface with a test interface. That's the only benefit I can kind of think of right now. Post posts. Hides member of super must need override. Even if I make that an interface and I come back here and I say, okay, it really won't change much, honestly. So usually try and keep each test as self-contained as possible and have less shared variables in your tests. That's kind of how the best way to keep your tests like self-contained. Especially in that scenario where you have hundreds of tests or thousands of tests and you're like sharing a lot of variables, it's gonna get quite hectic and stressful. And yeah, testing won't be as fun as it was when you're starting out. So I try and keep things as self-contained as possible, or just test what you just added. So if you actually do find that you're adding features and you're adding something and you have to modify a lot of parts in your test, then something is definitely, unless it's actually like a feature that cuts across the actual paths that you're modifying, or the actual test that you're modifying, it makes sense. But if you actually find yourself modifying, like you're just changing a little thing and you have to modify hundreds or most of your tests, then you definitely have to go back to the drawing board and see how you're configuring your tests. You should just be able to, so for example, if I wanted to add something new to this test, maybe there's a new path or something in the responses, I'll just have to worry about, I'll just have to come and create a new data set and add in that extra response and what they expect to be returned. And that's it. My test continues to work and I bounce. So your test should be very, very deterministic. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on testing. So there's a lot of things that can be said about testing, but it's also like a mindset shift thing. I think the more you do it, the more you identify these patterns and stuff. So I've been talking quite some time, had issues. I don't know if there's anyone else who has questions. I'll post this repo somewhere if you want to check it out. Yeah, there's so much to do with unit tests, but yeah, I'll just post this. If someone has any other unit testing specific questions, yeah, you can always just ping me something. How do you go about seeing the test coverage in your AES? Yeah, when you run the tests and you click on run, there's this run post blah 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 with coverage. So you can run this and see it. I don't know if it generates a report somewhere. Maybe it can if you wanted to. So you can also use other tools to dump this data into some dashboard somewhere. If you want to feel good about, I don't know, the metrics of your test. Yeah, just hit run with coverage. It's gonna show you what's going. I still don't get why it's not showing me the repository, because the repository is fully tested. Yeah. So I guess, Linus, that is all for today. So coverage pretty much shows you like it's just data on which parts you've covered and which parts have not been hit through your tests, and what parts you need to actually add to your test suite. So that's pretty much the benefit of coverage. I mean, yeah, you can have, but the thing is also you can have quite high coverage, but your tests are not really that valuable, I'd say. As much as testing is encouraged, you don't really have to test everything. I just say try and test the common areas in your app, especially if you don't have. Sometimes you might have time constraints. Try and test the common, areas. Some things you can't really test everything. Some things will be quite challenging to test in your day-to-day work, or you might have to come up with some complicated strategy to introduce tests, especially in old projects. So just try and find the sweet spot for your testing strategy and stick to it. You can use JUnit 5 nested test to apply the given when then practice. Yeah, I guess so. I haven't worked during 5 that much, just a little. I wanted to look at how they're doing parameterized tests. Let's actually see JUnit 5. Even then using JUnit 5. Let me see what you mean. I'm trying to see. Okay, so nested when. Okay. Yeah, I guess it. Yeah, so I'm looking at this and also thinking about how our test files look like at work. This would make our test files grow even to twice the size, and some of them already at 7K lines. Yeah, I guess if you feel like this works for you, I guess sure, why not? I guess it depends with also how you prefer to group your tests. That also works. PDD, we'll suggest using I think kind of has the BDD vibe to it. I think talking about the gherkin, okay, yeah, just feels like BDD. So I guess that's it. Yeah, unless anyone else has something to add.
Okay, so thanks a lot, David. This session was amazing. I also learned a thing or two about testing. So once you push the repo, I think I'll also share the links to the other groups and more details about the session too. And yeah, so thanks a lot for coming. This was really informative. And we hope to see you on another session soon again. So yeah, thanks a lot. So in case anyone has any question, you can stay behind and ask David. But at the moment, I think our meeting ends at this moment. So thanks a lot for coming. Today was amazing. So um, thanks a lot, and have a good evening and a good weekend to those who are starting the weekend today. So yeah, have a good night and thank you.
Peace.